title for this evening talk is The Eternal Bond, right? And here it is. Eternal Bond is one of the books, the Svarim, that we were privileged to write, myself and my wife. This particular book, which is Torah guidelines for married children's relationships with their parents. But the title that we, myself and Mike, decided on was The Eternal Bond, How to Effectively Maintain Good Family Relationships. That's the official title, so I just want to remind myself, so I'll stick to the point and get off track. So we're talking about human relationships. Human relationships from a Torah perspective is very different. In fact, in really to understand human relationships, we have to go into the Kabbalah. Yeah, we've got to go dig deep, the real secrets of Torah, because that's what human relationships are about. We're not bodies, we are neshamas. And there is in the Zohar HaKadosh, the Holy Zohar, which encompasses all the deeper secrets of Torah. So there's a whole discussion about what is the essence of relationships. To understand that, we have to understand what's a neshama. A neshama, this human soul, completely unique, and what's the Jewish neshama? The Jewish neshama. So Chazal tell us, it's written in the Zohar, there are 5 parts to the neshama. 2 of them are completely out of our reach. We don't even understand. We can't even begin. The Talmud says, late banu tfisa, we don't understand them at all. But what we can relate to is there's a nefesh, which is the life force inside every person. We're talking about Jews. The life force, the nefesh. There's the ruach. The ruach is some kind of best way to describe it is a spiritual pipe. It goes from our spiritual essence, our soul, and it goes up to the highest places possible. It goes up to what's called the Kisei HaKavod, the divine holy throne. And the Zohar continues, and what I'm going to explain now is based on the Ramban, the great interpreter, the Ramban, the Ravid, the Reshit Chochmah. These are the great, great early sources who gave real insights. What is the neshama all about? Kodesh Baruch Hu, on the first day of creation, say Chazal. It says in the Zohar, in the deeper secrets, on the first day of creation, he created all the souls of Jews ever to be in the history of this world. Created them all in one day, the first day. And these souls, Hashem wanted them to be as close as possible to him. So he made the Kisei HaKavod, the divine throne, is made up of the souls of Jews. So it's like one massive jigsaw puzzle. Each little face, I look around the room and I see different faces. No 2 faces alike. That's one of the essential differences between man and the rest of the creatures. We have unique faces because every individual is unique. Therefore, every individual takes a unique little part in that part of the jigsaw puzzle, this massive puzzle of all the neshamas of Jews ever to be. That's the divine throne. Hashem wants us right close by, right where he is. Where we have this gathering of all the souls, it gets reaffirmed every year, every time we read about Ma'amad Har Sinai. Ma'amad Har Sinai is when all the souls were there. They were all present. They all underwent a transformation and became something very, very special. That's when the essential Jew was created. It was Avraham Avinu, but the Jew was really created in Ma'amad Har Sinai, in Mount Sinai, and the giving of the Torah. And every year, when we read the parsha, which we read this last week, Parashat Yitro, we read about the giving of the Torah on Ma'amad Har Sinai. Says the great Shlach Kadosh, one of the great deeper interpretations of the Torah, the Shlach Kadosh says, when you've got tens of thousands of Jewish communities throughout the world, all reading the same thing on Shabbos morning, this past Shabbos, Jews throughout the world, from the furthest is Sydney on the map. It's on the map. As far as Sydney, my old buddy from Greenside, right? So it's as far from Sydney through entire world. Yidden are sitting and they're reading in shul on Shabbos morning. They're reading the parsha. Says the Shlach Kadosh, that creates an enormous spiritual energy. That achdut, that oneness, where we can feel we feel partners with Jews all over the world. We all read in the same Ma'amad Har Sinai. So something very special happens in the world. And this past Shabbos, as well as we read it again in Pesach. So this is what the Zohar HaKadosh describes. This is what the essence of man is. He's comprised of the soul. The soul is connected directly to the Kisei HaKavod. That's where the highest part of his neshama is, the neshama. And it's our duty to maintain the integrity of the soul. Chazal tell us, it's not Chazal, it's actually a pasuk in Shmuel Aleph. Shmuel Aleph says, Lo yidach mimenu nidach. Not one soul will ever get lost. Every Jewish soul throughout history, Lo yidach mimenu nidach. And Mitzvah Hashem, Mashiach will come when all the souls are all they're all in good shape and they all can take their place in this big puzzle. One of my kids was a avid jigsaw puzzle, and we used to buy him 5,000 pieces, and he used to sit pouring. He'd come home from school, come home from cheder, and pour over this, and he used to make these beautiful, beautiful, magnificent pictures. Once he made a puzzle, and the puzzle was great, but one piece got lost. So, my wife took a little piece of cardboard and sort of she tried to structure a little piece of the jigsaw puzzle, and that was inserted into the puzzle. Anybody who looked at this puzzle, so they'd see this beautiful scenery, but he'd say, hey, what happened there? That was the focus. That missing piece was the focus. And that's the pshat, that's what it means, lo yidach mimenu nidach. Not one soul will get lost. And if it does, chas v'sholom, it won't, but if it does, it's spoiling the divine plan. Hashem had a plan. He's built this enormous world, and it's spoiling it. So we've got to maintain the integrity of this plan of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's put us in this world, and that's our role, that's our mission. So it says that there are three partners to man. Shlosha shutafim ba'adam. That's HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem, husband and wife. These are the three shutafim. We all know that partners have to pull their weight. And the idea is we've got to keep this divine throne of Hashem intact. Everybody's got to pitch in. We've got to pull our weight. So Rav Lau, Senior, the former chief rabbi, Rav Lau Senior, told over the following Maaseh, the following story, that there was a great Rosh Yeshiva in Lita, in Lithuania, and he had many Talmidim, and he had a whole community. He had a nice, big, beautiful family. And then, as the Nazi beast came closer and closer to where they were, so his Kehillah approached him and said, we have a game plan, we'll be able to get you out of here, you and your family, and we'll hide you, you'll be saved. And he said, no, B'soch ami ani yosheves, I remain with my people. You'll be here, I'm here. unfortunately, virtually the entire Kehillah was wiped out. Along with the 6 million, the entire Kehillah was wiped out. There was one survivor. This one survivor made it to Eretz Yisrael, broken, shattered. He lost everything. But he felt a compelling need to try and perpetuate the memory of that great Kehillah, of that great yeshiva, that great Rosh Yeshiva. But he's the last person around. But he started doing research, amongst others, Yad Vashem. He started doing research, and he found out that one daughter of the Rav was the sole survivor of the entire family. And he, after a lot of efforts, he tracked her down. She was living in Vienna, but unfortunately, she was a broken soul as a result of that calamity, and she married out of the faith. She was married to a goy, living in Vienna. She had a son who was in a monastery. So he calls her up and he introduces himself, and she says, "I'm no longer part of the people. Don't call me," and puts down the phone. He tried again, same response. He bought a ticket to Vienna, and he arrived at the house, knocked at the door. The moment she recognized, when he introduced himself, she slammed the door in his face. "I have nothing to do with the Jewish people." Okay, he knocked again. She opened up a crack, and he said, "I've just come a long distance. I'd like to rest. Do you have a chair and a glass of water?" I said, "I'll sit outside. Won't bother you. I'd just like to rest." So it's a Yiddish heart, Jewish heart. She gave him a chair, and he sat and rested. And then, after a few minutes, he got up, knocked on the door to return the glass. And before she closed the door, he said, "Lady, I just want to give you one message. And the message is that the hamafteach beyadayich, the key is in your hands." That's all. And he turned and walked towards the taxi, which was waiting for him. And she ran up and she said, "What do you mean?" He said, "The key is in your hands." And he got into the car. And she came and she banged on the window. She says, "What do you mean?" So he said, "Okay, I'll tell you." He got out the car. And he said to her, "The key is in your hands because it is all your great father, that pious holy man, or Yimach Shemo Hitler. It's in your hands to determine who will win. He, Lo Aleinu, or you." And she broke down. She broke down and she said, "Okay, you can take my son." He said, No. You coming with me also. When we rebuild completely. After discussion, she acquiesced and she joined him. And they went back. She left a note for her non-Jewish husband. She has to go back to her people. And they arrived in Eretz Yisrael. Rav Lau ends this article by saying, that son became Echad Migdolei Rabbanim be'Eretz Yisrael. One of the great sages and rabbis in Eretz Yisrael is that son. Because Baruch Hu doesn't allow. Lo yidach mimenu dach. He won't let anyone get lost. Am Yisrael, we're all part of the same destiny. We're all part of the same puzzle. We're all part of the same picture. No one gets lost. And while HaKadosh Baruch Hu will do his bit, we have to do our bit. The eternal bond. The eternal bond is about family. The eternal bond, the essence of the eternal bond is parent-children relationship. That's the eternal bond. There are other relationships that are defined. There's husband and wife, there's siblings. But when we talk about the eternal bond, we're talking about parents and children, children and parents. It's a two-way track. So we read in this week's parasha, there's a mitzvah of Kibbud Vaeim. Kibbud Vaeim is based on a principle which is called Hakarat Hatov. Gratitude, to be in gratitude. That's what Hakarat Hatov is. And one of the great sages of more recent generations, the Ksav Sofer was the son of the great Chatam Sofer, and he wrote in an article, very famous article, he wrote that about this concept of Hakarat Hatov, of being able to be grateful for whatever one's received, to have gratitude, Hakarat Hatov, to recognize the good someone has done for one. And he wrote that this is the pnina of the keter, of all the midot. This is the jewel in the crown of all the midot. It's the most central midah that can be, the midah of Hakarat Hatov. And this is the essence, what drives Kibbud Vaeim. That's what drives it, a sense of gratitude. And the pasuk goes on, and it says, Kaved et avicha v'itemecha. So it says, Leman yitav lecha. Leman yitav lecha. Kaved et avicha mecha, honor your parents. Leman yitav, in order that it should become good for you. Leman yitav lecha. I'll tell you a story that I heard firsthand. It's a very famous family called the Reichman family from Toronto. Historically, they were fabulously wealthy people, but more so, they were probably the greatest Balei Tzedakah in history, the Reichman family, throughout the world. There was one of the most powerful business real estate companies in North America, London. And I knew very well one of the brothers, Eli Reichman. Eli Reichman is one of the four brothers who established this massive business. One of the brothers was Eli Reichman. Eli Reichman told me, and subsequently I've seen it written in books, Eli Reichman was about to have his bar mitzvah. His father, Reb Shmaya, was a hugely wealthy man. In Vienna, he was one of the most prominent Jews in Vienna. And he spared nothing. This bar mitzvah is going to be the greatest affair for Eli Reichman. This is in the year 1938. So he took a central hotel. He brought in a whole staff, and they kashered the hotel, lat kosher, and guests were coming in from all over the world. But very great rabbis, and very significant people. It was a very prominent, and this is going to be the event of the year. A few days before, when the guests had already started arriving, they were coming from all over the world. A few days before, his father, who was living in Hungary, in a village in Hungary, Father Reb David was living in Hungary, his father had a heart attack. And he survived, but he was unable to travel. Shmaya Reichman said, my bar mitzvah is going to be with my father. He can't come here, I go to him. And he said, let the festivities continue, but myself and my wife and the bar mitzvah boy are going to Hungary. And he arrived in Hungary, the three of them, this Eli Reichman and his parents arrived in Hungary. They had a little sweet little bar mitzvah ceremony in the home of his grandfather. They had a minyan there. On Motzi Shabbos, he went to the one phone that was in this little townlet or little village. He needed to phone to see what's going on back in Vienna. So his secretary tells him yeah, fine, there were celebrations, everything, but he says, but you had some visitors. And thankfully you weren't here. The Nazis invaded Vienna just before Shabbat, and the first people they went for were the wealthy and the prominent. They confiscated their belongings. They took all these wealthy people. They were never heard from again. And they took all the assets. They were after the assets initially. So Shmaya Reichman was saved because he decided to do Kibbud Vaeim at great cost to himself. Can you imagine? You're hosting the event of the year, and there's people pouring off from all over the world, and you're going to a little village in Hungary because that's where your father is, because you want to give some nachas to your father. That saved his life. He never went back to Vienna, and he ended up in Tangiers, Morocco, and there he continued his business, and ultimately came to North America, and the rest is history. An act of this nature, of real Mesiras Nefesh for Kibbud Vaeim, is an act which, again, this is enhancing. We're looking all the time to enhance and to strengthen this Jewish. We're looking to strengthen our whole Jewish essence, the whole Jewish community, the whole Kisei HaKavod is in our hands. No one shall get lost. So, the title of the talk was How to Effectively Maintain Good Relationships. So, let's get tachlis. How do you effectively maintain good family relationships? What steps do we have to do? Do we have to take to maintain them? So I'll give you a few points. Point number one, Ahava. Ahava is love. Love is an essential ingredient in any family. Love is something which has to be worked on. And Chazal tell us a fantastic thing. The word Ahava, its two central letters is Hav, Hey Bet, Aleph Hey, Bet Hey, Ahava. So Bet, Hav, Hey Bet, the two central letters of this word. Hav means to give. Hav, Havli, to give. Hav is to give. So, when we say Ahava, the essence, the essential ingredient in a Jewish family is giving. Is giving. As much as one can, is to give. And one shouldn't ever be worried, if I give and I give and I give, maybe I won't, I'll deplete myself. I'll tell you a great story I heard the other night. We had a simcha in the family, and I was sitting next to one of our mechutanim. If people may remember, Rabbi Aaron Pfeiffer from South Africa. Rabbi Aaron Pfeiffer was a big rabbi from Eretz Yisrael who came to South Africa, built a kehillah, and very significant kehillah. And he was tragically killed on his way back from the game reserve in a motor accident. And his grandchild is married to one of our grandchildren. So we had a simcha this week, and I'm sitting next to his son. And he told me a story about his father. His father used to come periodically to Eretz Yisrael. He used to come to consult with the big halachic authorities here. He had a special connection with Rav Shach, with the great Rosh Yeshiva of Panovich. He had a connection with Rabbi Yoshiv. And he came and he used to come periodically to consult on all kinds of halachic issues. He was a big genius. He was sitting, he wasn't sure. He thinks it was in Rav Shach's waiting room, a small little waiting room. He was sitting there in the waiting room, and there was a mother and daughter sitting in the room. And this daughter was getting married that night, and the mother and daughter came to Rav Shach for a brocha before the chuppah. It's a small little waiting room. I'd been there many times. And he couldn't help but overhearing a very animated conversation that was taking place between the mother and daughter. And the daughter, the Kala, was sad. And she was saying to her mother, but it's a custom to give in the Cheder Yichud, to give after the chuppah, to give the chosen a gold watch. And the mother was saying, yeah, but we're completely depleted. We can't afford it. And they were having a little discussion. And she was saddened, and the mother was trying to console her. The Foifer was sitting, and he overhears this conversation. He stands up, he takes his gold watch off his wrist, and he gives it to the mother and says, here's a gift for your daughter. And he left. Okay, great act of chesed, of sensitivity. That night, he traveled back to South Africa via Switzerland. So, in the airport in Switzerland, he figured, now I can't arrive home without my gold watch. My wife gave it to me in the Cheder Yichud. So I can't arrive home like this. So he went into the duty-free to purchase a gold watch. And he found a nice gold watch in the duty-free in Switzerland. And he's standing at the till, and the lady rings up this watch on the till, and it starts making noises. There's like a sharp noise comes from her cash register. The manager comes running up, and he looks at the till, and he says, congratulations, you are the millionth customer to purchase in this store, and whatever you purchased is for free. He got back his gold watch. Free. Just heard this week. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we're all pitching in. He's doing his bit, we've got to do our bit. But we've got to try and keep the integrity of the Kisei HaKavod. We've got to keep it going. So, I'll tell you another story. You'll only remember the stories anyway. So I'll tell you another story. There was a great mashal. This was, actually, I heard this mashal from a former colleague of mine, a great friend of mine, Rabbi Chaim Shane, if anyone remembers Rabbi Chaim Shane, from Bloemfontein ultimately, and he passed away tragically in COVID. Anyway, Rabbi Chaim Shane told me this Maisa. And he studied in Gateshead, he heard it from a big Rosh Hashiva, and it's a very deep source. It came from the Maharam, it came from a very deep source, this mashal. It's a parable. A man wanted to find out, we in this world temporarily, and we're going to have to go to the next world. But he was a very kind of discerning fellow. He wanted to know, where am I going to? What are the options? So he says the options are two options. There's Gan Eden or Gehinnom. Yeah, that's, or as they say in English, or heaven or hell. He says, okay, let me go and see. Let me get a feel of both of them. I'll decide where I want to be. So they take him first into Gehinnom, and he's taken into this banquet hall. And it's a banquet hall that's very lavish, and he sees waiters running around with trays of piping hot food, and the aromas are too delicious for words. And this is Gehinnom. He comes a bit closer, he sees people sitting at long tables, and they look very gloomy. And he sees the food, the tables are laden with food, no one's eating. He comes close and he sees everyone has got 3-foot-long knives and forks strapped to their arms. They're sitting like this with their arms. So these poor souls, they're sitting in front of this delicious food, but they can't flex their elbows to bring the food into their mouths. That's Gehinnom. You're sitting in front of the great food, and you can't eat it. He says, okay, I get the message. So he says, okay, let's go and see Gan Eden. They take him to Gan Eden. Same wedding hall, the same banquet hall, same waiters and food. And yeah, he hears the sounds of, sounds geschmack. Something good's going on here. He comes closer, everyone's eating. And they also are strapped to their arms, 3-foot-long knives and forks. How are they eating? Everybody is feeding the guy across from the table from him. He's in Gan Eden because he's the kind of person that when he saw someone else who was needy, his first initial thought is a guy who needs food. I can feed him. I'll feed him. There's a principle in Torah. It's a basic Torah. You can call it psychology, but kamayim aponim leponim kein lev adam lelev adam is a reflection, like water, like as a water reflection. When a person perpetrates a certain positive action, the receiver, the person who's on the receiving end, will reciprocate. That's the natural. That's the natural trend of a human being, is to reciprocate kindness. So this fellow, he sees a hungry person, he feeds him. The instant reaction is he's feeding him, and everybody's happy. He chose Gan Eden in the mashal, but the message is a very clear message that we have to the concept of giving generates mutual giving, and that's the way you build a family. That's where you build relationships. Is give unconditionally. Just give. Pour as much as you can into the other person, into one's friend, into the children. Just keep giving, and don't worry about it. You'll be reciprocated. Someone came to Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld. He was one of the early Rabbonim and the Rav of Yerushalayim. And Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, someone came and said, I know there's a mitzvah Kibbud Vaeim, but I'm a very busy person. I've got a big family. I have a parnosa. I've got to make significant parnosa. I'm very busy. I haven't got time for my parents. And as they're growing older, they're becoming more and more needy. But I just haven't got time. Oh, don't worry, no problem. You just keep giving everything that your parents need. Because the pasuk that we said, Kaver et avicha v'tamecha, kaver et avicha v'timecha, l'man yitov lecha, v'ha'arachta yomim, your days will be lengthened. So Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld said, don't worry, you've got no time, you have plenty of time. If you perform the mitzvah of Kibbud Vaeim, you'll have all the time you wish because your days will be lengthened. So the concept of giving, of doing, is an enormously important concept. Now, we can help people to give. We can help. We can how do we help people giving? So I'll move to the next point. There was a great rabbi called the Chazon Ish in Bnei Brak. He was one of the great, gigantic scholars that so much is built of Torah today is built in the Chazon Ish. And the Chazon Ish defines human relations in the following way. He says, Yachasei enosh, human relations, nivnim is built midvarim ktanim, from small little things. Don't think it's gigantic things. It's small little nuances. It's small little gestures. It's the little smile. It's the little note. Great Eitzah we got from the great Rabbi Chaim Pinchas Scheinberg. He gave us a great Eitzah once. He said, there's a great secret to keeping relationships going. Keep writing little notes. Small ones. Sometimes just a few words. I love you. I feel for you. You're great. Thanks. Just little notes. But just keep a steady flow. Says the Chazon Ish, that's how you build relationships. We want to keep these relationships healthy. In the family, just keep doing the smallest little gestures. Small gestures essentially comprise the essence of any relationship, says the Chazon Ish. Okay, guys, I can keep you here till I haven't seen anyone looking at the watches yet, but I know he can be nasty. I think this guy can be nasty if I go too long over time. So let me end with another story. We have to believe in Hashgacha Pratit. Hashgacha Pratit means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is controlling all the affairs of man in this world, of every single individual. So there's a difference between Goyim and Yidden, but Yidden, Jews, every little small action, every small thing that happens in our lives is controlled by the divine. And it's one of the basic essential beliefs, Hashgacha Pratit. Let me tell you a great story. back to the terrible days of the Holocaust. What the Nazis did in order to ensure cooperation from the local populace, they let the message out that when we round up the Jews, they know they're being rounded up, they're being sent somewhere, they're being exiled, so they're carrying all their valuable possessions, and Jews are very rich. They free game. You local Poles can just go and forcefully, we'll be there with our guns watching, that there won't be any resistance. When they're standing in line to get onto the trains, you can take whatever you want. It's yours. And this way they kept the local population very cooperative and very happy. It's a great ruse. 2 Polish ladies, I'll tell you in a minute how we know this whole story. 2 Polish ladies were prowling around to see what they can take, and they saw a young Jewish lady wearing a beautiful fur coat. Cold, European winter. They decide, oh, that's good game. Who knows what's inside that coat? So they went up to her, the 2 of them, accosted her, they demanded the coat, she refused, she resisted very, very strongly, and they started scuffling. The Nazi came along and he sort of pitched in, and within minutes they had this lady knocked to the floor, and they had the coat. These 2 Polish ladies walked off with the coat, and she was subsequently put onto the train. So they come back to their home and they've got another loot. So they feel it's heavy. There must be lots of gute Sachen, a lot of good stuff inside there. And they find all kinds of pockets. In the pockets with jewelry and diamonds and valuables and silver. And it was a big, big treasure there. And as they go through the pockets, they come to one pocket, and the lady feels it's some little bundle, a parcel. She pulls the parcel out, the bundle out, unwraps it, and to her shock, it's a newborn baby girl. This young lady had obviously just given birth, and she didn't want to part from her child, so she wrapped her child up, a little baby, and put the baby into her pocket. So the one Polish lady says, look, you can take all the valuables. I never had children. I've got no children. She's mine. I'm going to raise. She's going to be my child. She gives her a name. She called her Magda, a Polish name. And this little girl grows up in this Polish, she thinks that this is her mother. And she grows up in this home. And she's got a Yiddish kop. So she's top of the grades every year. She's the top student. She's a beautiful little girl, Yiddish girl, beautiful little girl. And she's a top academic. She's the most popular. And she grows and grows, and she finishes her schooling. And her grades were so good, she's given a stipend that she can go and study medicine. She goes to study medicine in Poland. She thought, this Magda, the Christian, so she thought. She goes to study medical, and she becomes a doctor because she specializes in pediatrics, becomes a pediatric surgeon. And at some point, her mother dies. Her so-called mother dies. She's in the home, and she's packing up the belongings. And the other lady, the one who took all the jewelry, etc., she arrives. She was the mother's friend. She arrives and she says, well, now that your mother's died, I want to tell you a secret. And she tells her the story. And she said, and you see this necklace around your neck that you always wear? She says, yes, it's a beautiful necklace. I've always had it. I have no idea. I've always had it. She said, yes. That necklace was found on your person when you were a little baby in that coat. And your mother kept it upon you. Now, if you look at that necklace, it's made in gold, and it's got some strange kind of writing. The writing is in the Hebrew language, written there, Yerushalayim, Jerusalem. You're Jewish. You come from Jews and you're Jewish. She doesn't know what to do with this. She's grown up as a Christian. It happened that she was appointed by the Polish government to represent in a medical conference in Manhattan for pediatricians. And she was sent as a representative. So yes, she arrives in New York. She's in Manhattan. She's walking the street of Manhattan, and she sees a bunch of Hasidic boys clearly Jews. She's never interacted with a Jew. She goes up to them and she starts babbling and talking. And I say, you know what? It sounds a very complicated question you're asking. And they direct her to a big rabbi. I've heard two versions. One say the big rabbi was the great Rav Moshe Feinstein. Others say it was the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Whatever it was, but that league, a great, this lady was directed with her story to this great rabbi. And whoever it was, Paskand, he said for her, you're Jewish, go back to your people. Leave Poland, it's a terrible place. Go back to your people, go to Eretz Yisrael. She comes to Israel, and all alone, she's now Jewish. She knows she's Jewish. She comes to Israel. She gets a job in Hadassah. Yeah, in Yerushalayim, and Hadassah in Karim. She gets a job in Hadassah as a pediatrician. She meets a nice Jewish doctor in Hadassah in Karim. They get married. After their marriage, one day, they're walking in the street in the middle of Yerushalayim, right near the intersection of King George and Rehov Yafo. That's the center of Jerusalem. There was a pizza store there called Zbaro. Now Zbaro, the owner, was my chavrusa, was a Talmud of mine who I learned with for many years. And he told me the story firsthand. His name is Yochai. And this guy Yochai tells me the story. What happened? It was a crowded pizza store. An Arab terrorist walked in with a knapsack full of explosives, and he exploded himself, and many people were killed. I think the number 26 sticks in my mind, but there were many, many casualties, and there were wounded, injured, lying all over the street. It was a huge explosion. One of the great, great tragedies. Magda and her husband are walking nearby. They're both doctors. So they immediately start dealing with the wounded. And you've got to prioritize. And they see an elderly gentleman running around screaming hysterically, my grandchild, my granddaughter, where's my granddaughter? So Magda gets up and she says, where was she? And they finally locate the granddaughter. She had shrapnel in her leg. She was lying amongst the wounded. So he's fussing around, and she starts treating this girl. In order to take her blood pressure, so she opens the top of her shirt, and she sees she's wearing exactly the same necklace that she's wearing, that Magda's wearing. And after she had stabilized her, she says to the father who's standing there, the grandfather who's standing there, she says to him, where did she get that necklace? Where's that necklace from? So the father says, I know. I'm a goldsmith. I made 2 necklaces. One I put on a granddaughter, and she, the Nazi beats took, and she's gone. And the other one was on this. Magda takes out her necklace, holding it in her hand, and holding the other necklace, and she says, Shalom, Abba. Is her father. This was publicized there were articles in the press here in Eretz Yisrael. An amazing story. Hashgacha Pratis. HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the show. Behind the scenes, sometimes it's overt, sometimes it's instant, sometimes it's over a protracted period of time. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the show. That's what Hashgacha Pratis is. That is one of the essential ingredients. We've got to constantly believe. We can have ups and downs in relationships, but we know it's all min hashamayim. Just keep going. Just keep positive. Just keep giving. Just keep loving. That's the essence of this mitzvah of Kibbud Vaeim. Yetz Hashem. We should all have simchas, great simchas. We should all see great nachas. And most important of all, we should all see in our days, we should all see the great simcha of Mashiach Tzidkenu coming, Bimher B'Yameinu, Yerushalayim is that away. And just, when he comes, be there. It's going to be the greatest simcha of history. Pleasure talking with you. Yetz Hashem, continue building, continue this great institution that I'm speaking for. Shkoyach.